So this is a painting by Samuel John Peploe called Harbour, Cassis. And I think it's actually quite a significant picture in his oeuvre, partly because, as we'll discuss in a moment, how the picture is made, but also the location. Cassis is a town between Marseille and Toulon on the French Mediterranean coast, and Peploe visited there in 1913. And it was there, in fact, that his first son, Willie, had his third birthday. He was there in the company of John Duncan Ferguson and his then partner, Anne Estelle Rice, along with Willie and Margaret, his wife. And it was his first trip to the Mediterranean. And I think it's not too far-fetched to say it was a complete revelation to him. He knew France very well, in the sense he'd been many times to the resorts in the north on the Channel coast, and spent some time in Paris, including living there for most of the previous 18 months. He'd actually just vacated his Paris studio and gone back to Edinburgh for various reasons. And this trip was at first rejected as an idea when mooted by Ferguson because he thought it would be too hot for Willie, who was 3, and he had a concern about that from a kind of heat welfare point of view. Apparently he was clearing his studio and saw a little affiche sort of on the wall in Montparnasse in Paris with the word Cassis on it, and he thought this was an omen, and he determined to go. And in fact the weather was perfectly ambient, and it turned out to be a fantastic trip, and he was enormously productive in Cassis. The subjects were the narrow streets behind the harbour front, some going steeply down from the Cassis station high up above the village. He painted in the kind of maquis, the sort of scrubland around the village also, and down at sea level, looking some times up to the what's known as Cassis Castle high above, but also looking back towards the kind of 3 or 4 story buildings that formed the harbour frontage. And this is one of these. The thing that strikes anyone looking at it first is it requires some interpretation, some analysis, because in some senses it is really quite abstract. There's a wonderful series of verticals, diagonals, horizontals, which make up what is, to all intents and purposes, an abstract composition. But at the same time, it is real observation of a particular place at a particular time. The colour, again, is gorgeous. He's using oranges and umbers, as well as these lovely off-whites, some subtle blues. The focus being this dramatic keynote of bright orange right in the centre of the composition. You're looking at the kind of schooners in the harbour, a little bit of water, the quayside with the bollards, and then the buildings behind and the harsh escarpment rising up above the buildings. When the Peploe family and Ferguson visited, Cassis was no more than a fishing village, although the harbour could take quite large schooners with material. Today, obviously, it's a very different place. When I visited there first 25 years ago, it was full of villas and quite touristy. A lot of big villas, probably built for the mafiosi of Marseille. When they went there, they stayed in a simple little hotel, perhaps one of 2 hotels in the village called the Hotel Panorama, and these were very, very happy times. Cassis is just along the coast from Collioure, where a few years before Matisse and Derain had made their first essays into Mediterranean painting, paintings which became quite celebrated and notorious in French art, and gave these artists the names fauves, meaning literally the wild beasts. And that element of expressionism is certainly here in this painting. It was Cassis and Royan paintings by Ferguson and Peploe that were included in a survey show at the Musée d'Art Moderne, a survey show about fauvism. They represented, I suppose, British art in that context brilliantly. You can say that this is, in a sense, the most advanced fauvist painting made by a British artist at that time, and they remain, these pictures and the others, some of his most important, significant modernist works. Like most of the pictures in this room, this picture has a family origin. It was one that was retained by Samuel John Peploe and eventually passed down by descent through the family. So it has never before been on the market. It has been exhibited, but it has never before been on the market. And as such, I think, provides an extraordinary opportunity for someone to acquire a very important modernist British work.